Yo, what's up, guys? It's me back with a new video today. Today we are doing why 2021 will be a horrible year. Well, we don't know that, but this video is about to tell us why it will be. So we have to listen. We have to listen and understand why. Obviously, a lot of people are doing different stuff. Obviously, there's still the corona. There's still virus is still going wild. People are still going through hard times. So I don't know. A lot of people thought that 2021 is gonna magically be a better year, but we don't know. Let's just see what the video says. Let's find out.
We're sure a few of you have thought at some point this year, I can't wait for 2021.
Yeah, I think we all felt
2020
that.
wasn't exactly a barrel of laughs for
We
most
all
people.
felt that,
We won't
yeah.
even go into biblical fires, floods, famine, and swarms of hungry locusts. COVID-19 was a good enough reason to get
Yeah,
most people
COVID
to
was
admit that
everywhere,
2020
guys.
wasn't their favorite.
Still
year
is
to date.
everywhere,
You
to
don't
be
have
honest.
to get the virus to hate the damn thing. Maybe it robbed you of work. Maybe it drove you half crazy trying
That's what I
to fully
said, yeah.
understand
People being isolated, losing their jobs. It's been really crazy this year.
it. Maybe it made you anxious and depressed as it did for millions of
too.
others. Maybe after lockdown you looked at your protruding belly and almost thought
That's
you were
me.
pregnant. Let's face
That's
it, we
me.
can all take something
But
negative from the
2021,
pandemic. The question
right,
is, can
let's
things
go.
get any worse? Could 2021 be a kind of horror sequel to 2020? Do
Imagine.
you
That
remember
could
that
actually be.
tagline from the movie Jaws? Just when you
No.
thought it was safe to go back in the water. Let's imagine the movies. 2020, the year of the pandemic, and the sequel, 2021, the beginning of the end. Maybe you're
Yo,
now
imagine.
thinking, no way, no damn way will next year be worse than this. Things couldn't get any worse. Well, we're sorry to inform you, but things could always get worse. Now you need to hear how things could really go down the pan in 21. It goes without saying that if no COVID-19 vaccine was released and available to the public at large next year, then deaths could continue to
Yes,
spiral
are
and
actually
lockdowns could
expiring
carry
right now. I saw like even London's under lockdown. Like they're like extremely like one thing was like 1,000 deaths in one day or something. And even here in South Africa, like the amount of cases is rising rapidly. It's mad. It's actually mad.
on destroying economies and wrecking families. As we write this, there's news about a vaccine, and it is positive news. Preliminary trials suggest it works, but it's early days. And also, as we
Yeah.
write this, there has been a huge spike in COVID daily deaths. What if the virus
Facts.
mutates into something worse? Is that even possible? According to Nature magazine, one of the better science resources out there, the virus has been mutating. We tell you exactly what a well-known virologist said about that, but for 90
A new strand. Ooh. I don't know. Like I am not in the loop much for this kind of thing, so I don't really pay attention to it. But it could be. I mean, if imagine the virus mutates and becomes like, imagine the zombies. Imagine we turn into zombies.
99% of you, it would sound like scientific gobbledygook. In simple terms, yes, the virus has mutated. The good news is scientists came out and said the media exaggerated that. You can go online and see the numerous news stories with headlines saying
Media
things like,
exaggerates everything,
mutation
to be
more
honest. They exaggerate
contagious and
everything.
mutation more deadly. That might not be true at the moment, but the fact is, this virus could get worse next year. It's
Oh,
unlikely,
my
but it
goodness.
definitely could happen. In November, a group of scientists was asked to predict what the state of the pandemic
What
would
report
be in
looks like that?
21, and you guessed it, they
What
had no
the
idea.
hell? That
One
looks like-
scientist at Yale
Okay.
said the Pfizer vaccine looks promising, but he also said even
Pfizer.
if the vaccine passes more trials with flying colors, it'll take many months to get people vaccinated.
Yeah, because like they're gonna have to vaccinate every single country, which means they have to get millions and millions of vaccines per country. And I think I heard something about they have to like transport it at like a certain temperature as well. So it's gonna be a while before everyone gets vaccines.
COVID will not magically disappear. Well, it likely won't. Viruses have been known to peter out in the past, but we might have another year on our hands. Another scientist said it won't be enough just vaccinating certain groups of people, i.e. those most vulnerable. In other words, we aren't going to solve the COVID problem just because we most likely have a vaccine that will stop COVID in its tracks for 80% of those that are given it. More
Yeah.
virus casualties are only a possibility, but what's almost certain is the chaos that will happen next year because of global lockdowns. The fallout from lockdowns is very real. Some astute investors, COVID-19 contractors, tech folks, and vaccine makers might be getting incredibly rich as the sun shines.
That's the sad part, is that all those people with the vaccine are getting so much money. They're becoming so rich off our like sorry demise, but like our bad times, and they're getting rich off it, which is kind of sus. I don't like the fact that it has happened. Um, but yeah, also the economic state of everyone. I mean, but small businesses and stuff are basically like closing down because they can't cope with having this virus. They can't integrate online most of the time, and then they just close down because they get no business, no customers, and the economies all around are struggling.
Down on empty streets, but the vast majority of folks have been hit hard by the pandemic. It might be bad now, but what about next year? It's hard to say just how many people have lost their jobs due to lockdowns. As we write this, The Guardian says 670,000 jobs have been lost in the UK since the start of the year. Spain, a country that is very reliant on tourism for its economy, is said to be the hardest hit country in Europe. In Thailand, it's reported that 1 million people working in the tourism industry lost their jobs this year, and they had no help or hardly any help
tourism,
from
and there's
the
no
government.
tourism because there's no
OECD
traveling, so it makes sense.
statistics show a massive economic decline in many countries. The Pew Research Center said in September 1 in 4 U.S. adults had trouble paying their bills since the outbreak. It also reported 25% of people said that someone in their house had lost their job. 50% of them found another job, but the other half is still unemployed. Okay, so these statistics are going to change a lot, but one thing is for sure, there will be no more magic wands available. Millions and millions of people around the world are going to face hardship and debt next year. COVID
100%.
poverty is very
People I understand, like, it's not gonna be so easy to get out of what we in now. This year of 2020 has messed up everything so much. It's gonna be a long time before if things go back to normal, if ever.
real. We might see how these hardships manifest next year. We already know that in the US, suicide hotlines have been busier than ever this year. Worried about the effect stress has on the body? Yep, it negatively affects the efficacy of the immune system. That might translate into more health problems next year. In the US, there's already a drug addiction problem that is frankly out of control. The question is, with all this job loss, stress, and depression, do you think 2021 will see positive results regarding addiction? Listen to this excerpt from a research paper that was published in July. According to a recent study from the Wellbeing Trust, the high levels of stress, isolation, and unemployment due to the COVID-19 pandemic could cause up to 75,000 deaths of despair related to drug, alcohol, and suicide. What a bleak-sounding phase. Deaths of despair. That 75,000, by the way, only relates to the USA, a country with some social safety nets. As for suicides, we're not going to bother citing all the news media and studies. Look for yourself. Thoughts of suicide and actual suicide have increased in many countries. So, if you were the kind of person to gamble, how much money would you put on 2021 being a bumper year for addiction, suicide, ill health, and mental illness? What about crime rates? We already know this year the murder rate went through the roof in some big cities in the US.
Yeah, because especially with people struggling now, people don't have money, so they obviously need to find a source of income or something, need to find a source of something, so they end up going to crime to get what they need, which could happen more in 2021. The crime rate could even get higher because people are struggling, and the only way to survive is going to be to steal and kill and take other people's stuff. It's a horrible thought, but it's very possible.
US. But do you think this will be a trend in 2021? What about domestic violence? What happens when you upset the flow of drugs and things and they struggle to get their cut?
That guy's
it's too early to
bro.
say just how crime rates will be affected by lockdowns, but so far, the outlook isn't good. COVID has created a perfect storm, and we don't think anyone will disagree. The question is, how bad will the storm be? Maybe it'll fade away and not be half as bad as some people think, or maybe it'll be far worse, a real home wrecker. 2021 could be the year that crime goes through the roof. Maybe some people already know this in the US because gun purchases drastically increased this year. Okay, so far we have mass job loss. As a result of this, we have stress. We also have depression and debt. We might see some more drug and alcohol use, and we might see surges.
Unlike South Africa, where alcohol is banned, over here, there's more ban and stuff. There's no alcohol abuse because it's banned.
Crime. Is that it? The end of the show? No, we're not even close to finishing. Things could get a lot worse. Imagine this scene. It's July 2021 and you just gone out to Walmart to pick up that gift for your aunt's birthday. You walk through the doors and before you can get that far, a robot that looks like a mini version of those Doctor Who Daleks approaches you. It doesn't say exterminate, but it says do not enter. Go straight back home. You are currently in violation of Clause 6.0606 of the Enhanced Freedom to Not Do Much law. Do not ignore this demand. Oh, and you have an outstanding parking fine. And we also know about that sketchy website you visited at 2:38 p.m. last week. We're just
What
kidding, of course,
websites are
but
you going
privacy
to, bro?
advocates around the world are right now
Watching you.
very concerned about new surveillance technology and how it'll be used or perhaps abused. We already have facial recognition cameras that can tell if you have a high temperature. We already have drones and robots that move around public spaces and tell you what to do. These things might help in time of crisis, but is there a chance that this technology will create a kind of dystopia that we've been seeing inside?
Like in most games and stuff, yeah, where the robots are there and the public is against it, and it becomes like a battle. It could happen. It really could.
Sci-fi movies for a while now. Some of the biggest human rights organizations this year came out and said they were worried governments might use the pandemic as an excuse to curtail our freedom. When governments enforce restrictions on our freedom, they usually stay. And 2020
That's clearly
is just
Trump.
a warm-up
Wow.
for 2021.
That's
if the
obviously
virus doesn't
Trump.
go away, perhaps in 21 we'll be tracked and traced to the extent that we start to feel our freedoms have diminished. Will
I
next year
really
usher
think
in
that could
police
happen,
states
yeah.
around the world? We've
I think
already seen
that
how
we're gonna
governments
like even
spy
now
on
with
us
the new
without
the WhatsApp thing, the privacy thing, taking more data, taking they people think they have their own privacy, living their own life. Not anymore. Not anymore.
telling us, but could things get a lot worse? As the American Civil Liberties Union wrote, maybe after they've watched you outside and in your home and on the web, you'll become suspicious for the vaguest of reasons. This is what was said in a letter that was signed by more than 300 leading academics this year. We are concerned that some solutions to the crisis may, via mission creep, result in systems which would allow unprecedented surveillance of society at large. China is already a surveillance state that's criticized in the West, but don't be surprised if in 2021 Western countries adopt the China monitoring model. Welcome to the new normal, aka 1984, a true story by George Orwell. And for our viewers in China, well, we know you can only watch our show via proxy since YouTube is banned there, but just know that
That's
you're
mad
in
that
our thoughts.
YouTube is actually
And
banned
what
in
about that
China.
necessity we call food? During the height of the pandemic, the New York Times reported that food banks across the U.S. couldn't meet the demand of the hungry. Demand for food assistance is rising at an extraordinary rate, said the newspaper. Will this suddenly go away in 2021?
No,
we doubt
hell
that.
no.
You could go online and read about food queues stretching for miles, and
Like
that's
shops,
not only
even
in the
shops,
U.S.
like,
the
you have to,
Guardian
like,
reported
line
in
up and
November
wait
that there was an
forever.
emerging group of people in the U.K., what it called the newly hungry. These were mostly desperate middle-income families, not only poor families. So think about it. Economies probably won't go into hyperdrive in 21. Jobs won't all just come back since so many businesses have gone for
Yeah,
good. Get ready for a new
things are
normal of
closed
food banks
down.
popping up all over the place next year. Experts also think homeless rates will rise next year.
Do
In
we
the
have
US,
any
the
food ba- I don't
Coalition
know
for
if
the
I know if
Homeless
we have
said there
food
will
banks
be a
in South Africa,
tsunami
to be
of
honest. We don't
evictions
really
if
have
people
much in
don't
South
get help
Africa.
from the government to assist them to pay their rent. This help will have to be ongoing if it's to work. Right now in the US, there's an eviction moratorium to protect people, but that's only in place until December 31st. One expert predicts mass evictions at the beginning of the new year. What
Which
an awful
can-
come down that would be after the celebration.
That's gonna be
Let's
mad,
also
yeah.
remember that while a lot of our viewers come from the US, millions of people who watch our shows come from countries that have very threadbare safety nets for people in place who've hit
Like
a
South
financial
Africa.
rock bottom.
Welcome.
What
We
if
have load
people
shedding as
don't
well.
get the help they
Over
need?
here, we
If you
have
walk down some streets
viruses
in
up,
LA or city
and we
centers
have
in
load
UK
shedding.
cities,
You know,
you'd
fun
think
times.
these two countries belong to the developing world or worse, post-apocalyptic nations. The homeless problem is insane and it could get much worse next year. The Washington Post wrote in September that hundreds of millions of people were on the brink of starvation because of the pandemic. Oxfam wrote that the world should be prepared for a hunger pandemic. Other organizations are warring off mass starvation in poorer nations that are already suffering from endless conflicts and agricultural chaos. The World Bank estimated in 2020 that by 2021 there will be 150 million more people living in extreme poverty. Maybe you
That's
think this
right.
won't affect you, but when the chaos flaps its wings on one side of the world, it usually has a way of affecting the other side of the world.
Affects everyone.
This is
Everyone's gonna get
happening
affected.
now, but
No
what if
one's ever
millions of
gonna be
people
safe.
do start to face starvation? What can be the upshot of that besides dying or ill health? Well, one thing that might happen is people start
Rioting,
looking
bro.
for a populist despot to get them out of the fix. More conflicts could break out, more war, more desperation.
Yep,
If history
violence.
has taught us anything, it's
It's gonna
that
go to
that's
violence.
always a recipe for disaster. If wealthier nations start seeing more people without enough to eat, what might be the consequence of that? More desperate voters rallying behind the banner of a despot. More honest people turn to a life of crime. People will do anything to survive. Not enough
100%,
food in
100%.
2020 could mean devastation in 2021. America
I mean, be honest now. If it came down to that, no? Say your family needs to eat, and the only way you're getting them food is to go to crime. Are you doing that? Are you yourself? Would you see yourself turning to crime to keep your family alive? Good question. Answer in the comments down below. And while you're there, you can subscribe and like this video because why not?
America's infamous prison industrial complex is probably getting ready for a big expansion. Could it get any worse than that? Yes, of course it could. Right now, we're seeing a very divided country in terms of politics. Conservatives are constantly arguing with liberals, and it seems no side will back down. The haves don't seem to care much about the have-nots. The latter is asking, who's got my back? The former cares less about poverty than it does about who said what on Twitter. Just look online and check out Protests 2020. It's been a big year.
That also been mad, because if you actually think about it, all across the world there's been tons and tons of protests and riots, like the people against this isolation and quarantines and stuff, but you won't see it anywhere on the media. The media blocks it out like it doesn't exist, so you don't actually see it, so you don't know what's happening. You just think everyone is calm, accepting the rules and stuff, where it's actually not happening. If you actually Google the riots and stuff on YouTube and stuff, you will actually see that across the world people are actually standing up against this isolation and quarantine and stuff, but it's been so quieted down. You think everyone's just happily isolating. It's mad.
For disagreements. This could of course lead to progressive change and we all might live happily ever after, maybe in the long run anyway. But what if all this division leads to larger protests that turn to violence that manifests as a civil war? Something has got to give. There has to be a middle ground or 2021 could be a very ugly year. Let's not forget that people genuinely fight for causes, but when you throw in mass unemployment and hunger, sometimes anger comes ahead of reason.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
you'll be lucky enough to have cash in 2021, but that doesn't mean you won't suffer. Travel research showed that during lockdowns in 2020, people were gunning to get out of their country and travel. But what if that can't happen next year? What if borders don't open? What if the travel you have to navigate so much red tape it's just not worth the trouble? That'll mean another year in the same place watching the same disaster news, wondering when you'll ever be able to escape. Okay, so this is all very grim, but remember, it's a worst case scenario show. Don't worry,
Yes,
soon
guys,
we'll turn all
Be
this on its
positive,
back and
be
give you a
positive,
best
but
case scenario show. We
let's
hope we haven't
let's
impressed you.
just pray that
Remember, things could
2021
always be
won't be
worse.
as worse as
And
2020,
if you need a
but
little
I'm
silver
not sure
lining,
it's going to be
Keeping
much
Up with
better,
the
to be
Kardashians
honest,
will
in
have
my
its final
opinion.
season in 2021. Now,
Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. It's kind of grim. I know that 2021, we don't know what's going to happen, but we can only hope that it's going to be better. I know people are struggling. I know everyone's having a hard time. So I hope this video, and I hope seeing my stuff will cheer you up and put a smile on you guys' face. I hope you guys have a good day today. And I hope that you subscribe and like the video. And check me out on Twitch as well, because why not? I stream every single day and it's fun times, fun vibes. Take your mind off some things for a while, couple hours, take your mind off something and just have fun. Hope you guys are doing well, and peace.